The room was dim. Dust particles danced in the faint rays of sunlight. Toys lay scattered and untouched. A small boy sat in the corner, hugging his knees. He was quiet, almost invisible. He longed to join the other children playing outside, but he was afraid. He felt unseen, unheard. The boy retreated further into himself. He found solace in books. Stories became his escape, his companions. He imagined himself as the hero, saving the day. But reality always pulled him back. The feeling of invisibility lingered, a shadow he couldn't outrun. He yearned for connection, for someone to see him, to acknowledge his presence, but his voice remained trapped within, a silent plea lost in the vast expanse of his loneliness. He wished to break free from this invisible cage, but the fear, the doubt held him captive. The boy lived in a world of whispers. His thoughts, his dreams remained locked within. He was a ghost in his own life, unnoticed, unseen. And as the years passed, the feeling of invisibility only deepened. It became a part of him, an unwelcome companion on his journey. The school hallways bustled with energy. The sound of lockers slamming, the hum of conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter created a symphony of teenage life. Laughter and chatter filled the air, a constant reminder of the vibrant social world that thrived within these walls. Yet amidst this lively environment, the teenager felt lost in the crowd. He was surrounded by people, but the sense of isolation was overwhelming. He was a face in the sea of faces, easily forgotten. His presence seemed to blend into the background, unnoticed and unacknowledged. He tried to speak, to join the conversations that swirled around him. He mustered the courage to step into the social circles, hoping to be heard, but his words were drowned out by the noise. The louder voices of his peers overshadowed his attempts, leaving him feeling even more invisible. He excelled in his studies, finding comfort in books and knowledge. The library became his sanctuary, a place where he could escape the chaos of the hallways. He joined clubs, hoping to find a place to belong. He participated in activities, trying to carve out a niche for himself in the school community, but the feeling of invisibility persisted. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the sense that he was on the outside, looking in. He was always on the periphery, never quite fitting in. The edges of social groups became his usual spot, a place where he could observe but not participate. The spotlight seemed to avoid him, shining brightly on others. He watched as his peers basked in the glow of friendship and camaraderie. He watched as his peers effortlessly navigated the social landscape. They moved with ease, forming connections and building relationships. They formed bonds, shared jokes, and created memories. The laughter and joy they shared seemed like a distant dream to him. He yearned for that connection, for the warmth of friendship. The longing in his heart grew with each passing day, a constant ache that he couldn't ignore. But something held him back. A barrier that seemed insurmountable, preventing him from reaching out and making those connections. A fear of rejection, a feeling of unworthiness. These emotions weighed heavily on him, creating a wall between him and the world around him. The teenager carried his invisibility like a heavy cloak. It was a burden that he couldn't seem to shed, no matter how hard he tried. It weighed him down, suffocating his spirit. The constant feeling of being overlooked and ignored took a toll on his self-esteem. He wished to break free, to shed this burden and emerge into the light. The desire for change burned within him, a flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. But the fear, the doubt, kept him tethered to the shadows. The uncertainty of stepping out of his comfort zone held him back. He remained a spectator in his own life, yearning for a chance to play a part. The world moved on around him, and he watched, hoping for the day he could join in. The office was a hive of activity. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and conversations overlapped. The young man sat at his desk, diligently working. He was efficient and dedicated, always willing to go the extra mile, but his efforts went largely unnoticed. He would offer ideas in meetings, his voice barely a whisper. His suggestions were often overlooked, lost in the cacophony of opinions. He yearned for recognition, for someone to acknowledge his contributions, but he remained invisible. A shadow in the corporate machine, the colleagues he saw every day, whose names he barely knew, seemed to move through the office with ease. They chatted, laughed, and shared stories. He observed them from afar, longing for that camaraderie, but he couldn't bridge the gap. His lunch breaks were solitary affairs. He ate at his desk, lost in his thoughts. He watched as others gathered in the break room, their laughter echoing through the hallway. He wished to join them, to be a part of something. But the fear of rejection kept him rooted to his chair. He was a ghost in a suit, haunting the halls of his own workplace. Section 4. The Weary Worker. Years turned into decades, each day blending into the next, a monotonous cycle of work and routine. The man, now older, carried the weight of his invisibility, a burden that grew heavier with each passing year. His hair was streaked with grey, his shoulders stooped from the relentless grind. The signs of aging were etched deeply into his face, each wrinkle a testament to the years of hard work and sacrifice. He had spent his life working diligently, always striving to do his best. His desk was a testament to his dedication, cluttered with notes and reminders of tasks yet to be completed, but the recognition he craved remained elusive. The empty office, the blank achievement plaques all served as stark reminders of the accolades that never came. He was a fixture at the office, a familiar face that blended into the background. The hustle and bustle of the office continued around him, indifferent to his presence. His colleagues greeted him with a nod or a passing word, a brief acknowledgement that lacked any real connection or appreciation. But no one truly saw him. He was like a ghost, moving through the office unnoticed, his presence barely registering with those around him. No one acknowledged the quiet dedication, the countless hours he poured into his work. Late nights at the office became a norm, his tired eyes a silent testament to his unwavering commitment. His efforts were met with indifference, his contributions taken for granted. The work he did, the ideas he brought to the table, all seemed to vanish into the ether, unnoticed and unappreciated. He had become invisible, a cog in the machine. The office, once a place of potential and opportunity, had become a labyrinth of monotony and insignificance. The passion that once burned within him had dwindled to a flicker. The dreams and aspirations of his youth seemed like distant memories, overshadowed by the relentless demands of his job. The disappointment, the feeling of being overlooked had taken its toll. Each day, the weight of unfulfilled potential pressed down on him, a constant reminder of what could have been. He felt a profound sense of weariness, a longing for something more. The view from his office window, once a source of inspiration, now only served to highlight the distance between his reality and his dreams. He yearned for a life filled with purpose, for a chance to make a difference. The family photo on his desk was a reminder of the life he wanted to lead, a life where his efforts were valued and his presence mattered. But as he looked back on his years of unnoticed toil, a sense of resignation washed over him. The documents and files that chronicled his career seemed to mock him, each page a reminder of the recognition that never came. He began to accept his fate as a ghost in his own life. The reflection in the mirror was a stranger, a man who had given everything and received nothing in return. As he walked away from the office, he carried with him the weight of a lifetime of unacknowledged dedication. Section 5. An empty departure. The day arrived, as it inevitably does for all of us, when it was time to move on. It was a day marked on his calendar, a date circled in red, a reminder of the inevitable change that was about to unfold. The man packed up his belongings, his heart heavy with a mix of emotions. Each item he placed in the box was a fragment of his past, a piece of his identity that he was now leaving behind. The framed photos on his desk, the trinkets collected over the years, all held memories of a time that seemed both distant and immediate. There was relief, of course, at the thought of leaving behind the monotony of his work. The endless cycle of tasks and deadlines, the routine that had become a second nature to him, was finally coming to an end. He closed the file cabinet with a sense of finality, taking a deep breath as he allowed himself a faint smile. But there was also a profound sense of emptiness. The office, once bustling with activity, now felt like a hollow shell. The silence was deafening, amplifying the void that had begun to grow within him. His face, a canvas of mixed emotions, reflected the inner turmoil he was experiencing. He had spent decades in this office, a silent witness to the passage of time. The cluttered desk, the old papers and files, the wall covered in office memorabilia, all stood as testaments to the years he had dedicated to his work. Each item told a story, a chapter of his life that was now coming to a close. He had poured his energy, his dedication into his work. Late nights spent in the dim office, intensely focused on the computer screen, had become a norm. His commitment was unwavering, his drive relentless. Yet, despite all his efforts, he couldn't help but feel that something was missing. Yet, as he prepared to walk out the door for the final time, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving no trace behind. The empty desk, once a hub of activity, now stood as a stark reminder of his impending departure. He paused, hand on the handle, looking back one last time, hoping to find some semblance of closure. There were no farewell parties, no heartfelt speeches of gratitude. The break room, usually filled with chatter and laughter, was now eerily quiet. His colleagues, engrossed in their work, barely acknowledged his presence. It was as if he had already become a ghost, a mere shadow in the background. Just a few mumbled goodbyes and the clatter of keyboards as his colleagues continued with their day. The office buzzed with activity, the sound of typing filling the air. It was business as usual, and his departure was just another event in the daily grind. He realized with a pang of sadness that his absence would hardly be noticed. The crowded office, the bustling hallway, all seemed to move on without him. He stood alone, a solitary figure amidst the chaos, feeling the weight of his insignificance. He was a ripple in a pond, quickly fading from memory. The reflection in the window, once clear and defined, now seemed to blur and fade, much like his presence in the office. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, a stark reminder of the transient nature of existence. As he walked out of the office building and into the bustling city streets, the man felt a profound sense of loneliness wash over him. The city, with its constant motion and noise, seemed indifferent to his plight. People rushed by, each absorbed in their own world, oblivious to the man who had just left a significant part of his life behind. He was invisible, just another face in the crowd. The anonymity of the city, once a source of comfort, now felt like a burden. He walked through the crowded streets, unnoticed and unacknowledged, his presence blending seamlessly into the background. He had spent his life seeking recognition, yearning to be seen. The wall of awards and certificates, once a source of pride, now seemed hollow and meaningless. He stared into the mirror, his reflection a stark reminder of the man he had become and the dreams he had left unfulfilled. But in the end, he realized he was leaving the world the same way he had entered it, quietly, unnoticed, and utterly alone. The city street at dusk, the quiet, empty park, all seemed to echo his solitude. He walked on, a solitary figure in a vast, indifferent world, coming to terms with the reality of his existence.